Today's guest is Paul Ludacka, founder of Ludacka Wealth Partners, a Northwestern mutual company. Paul is a 7-time top 20 advisor. He's a 19-time forum qualifier, 15 consecutive years. He's 4 for 4 with the Forbes top 20 financial security professionals in the U.S. And 9 consecutive years, he's been the best in Omaha financial planning and investment firm. Paul is here to share with us what he's learned in his 28 years as a financial advisor about entrepreneurs managing money and how he leads his family with faith. If you ask Paul the secret to his success throughout his career, he'd say relationships. Life is all about relationships. Paul has spent his career intentionally building amazing relationships with exceptional people. Paul and his wife, Sarah, are raising 5 kids and are deeply committed to serving their Omaha community and beyond. Get ready for an impactful episode with one of the best people I know, Paul Ludacka.
Trying to reach my goals, got no time for mistakes. Yeah, I'm standing on business, need a big safe. Suited up, got the blueprint in the briefcase. It's go time on the grind, needs a big stakes.
Broadcasting from the franchise Sidekick studio, welcome to the Sidekick Life. Get ready for stories of passion, problem solvings, and success from those living life on their terms. All right, Paul, so pumped to have you here. For those of you that are watching, I want you to know about Paul and I's relationship. He is one of the most important people in my life. You often say iron sharpens iron, and without you, I think I would be a soft piece of putty. And you've helped me become as close to iron as I can become. You are somebody that has been a wonderful friend, one of my best friends. You've been somebody that's been a mentor to me and, of course, my financial advisor. So you've been helpful to me and my family in so many ways.
Thank you.
Excited to have you here. However, our audience only wants to give you about 1 minute for them to decide whether or not you are worth their time. So why should the people listening spend more than 1 minute with us?
I love it, the pressure. So I think of 2 things. In our office, we always say we believe in the gift of high expectations. So thanks for placing that on me. Yeah. And just for the record, we're in Little Omaha, Nebraska. Do you know what Warren Buffett always says is the key to any successful relationship?
I do. Do you want me to say it?
Go ahead.
Low expectations.
Low expectations.
Right.
So I appreciate the high expectations. Well, I just think of our story and how we met. I mean, you were literally a nobody from nowhere with nothing. You were 23 years old, an aspiring entrepreneur. You had no cash, no money. And we were just pouring into one another, spending time together. And I remember distinctly back to you sitting at that big round table at NDS headquarters. You're like, Paul, why are you spending so much time with me? You have all these amazing clients that you work with all over the country. Why me? And then you literally pushed your U.S. bank account. There it is. Dude.
There it is. I printed it. I literally printed it to show you how worthless I was.
Dude, you're making me cry. That picture has so much value in my life and in our history, and it's very much a heartstring. I'm sure you've talked with your audience about building a story brand and the power of the avatars. And one of our favorite avatars is Ryan the acorn. Because of you. But back to that story and that photograph specifically, Zink pushed that across the table to me and said, why do you spend so much time with me? I don't have any money. And I pushed it back and I said, because acorns turn into oak trees. And Zink, I see in you the potential you have not yet realized. And you are a tiny acorn that will one day be a mighty oak tree. And now look at this. Look at what you're doing. Think of all the lives you've impacted. I'm just so very proud of you.
That was, everybody has those monumental moments in their life. And that was, I didn't even realize it at the time. I felt great. I felt great that you believed in me. But at the moment, I didn't realize how it would be fuel and it would motivate me for so long to continue to do this. And we'll share some other stories as well. And so for those of you that are listening and you're wondering, is this going to be worth my time? I will tell you, Paul was so worth my time. So if you're an aspiring entrepreneur or an existing entrepreneur, there's so much wisdom that I've received from you over the years. And because that story meant so much to us, and Timmy, I think you've got some of these photos you can share as well. It's continued to be the cornerstone of our relationship, right? I mean, you were a big part in Mandy and I deciding to buy a farm that we want to share those experiences with our family. Your idea, which I loved, was we took a copy of this bank statement and we buried it right at the corner when you drive to the farm. We buried it on the driveway there underneath an oak tree that we planted.
It's incredible.
And it's still there today. And I know Timmy's got some of the photos that he can share. So you and those stories have meant so
You
much.
guys are going to make me cry.
I love it. Let's go.
Let's go. Incredible.
But they don't want to just keep hearing about us. So let's talk a little bit about what you do and how you help people. So just really quick, share a little bit about.
before we move on to that, I want to stay on, because I think words have power, and that's what I think Tyler's feeling and hearing now. So I want to stay on that for a moment, if you don't mind.
Of course.
What you're describing, we call an inflection point, and that is a moment in time when everything changes. And I think of how words have power, and so there's so few opportunities in this world where people speak life or speak power into others. And that's why I love what you're doing, because I think you're doing that. So I know I'm going off script, but can I share just two really quick stories? Tyler, for the sake of trying not to be too emotional, I think of one of my favorite stories of Thomas Edison. And Thomas Edison, the urban legend, he had an amazing relationship with his mother, but the urban legend is he came home from school when he was 6 years old, and he had a letter addressed to his mom. He handed the letter to his mom, and as she began to read it, just tears flowed down her face. And he's like, "Mom, what does the letter say?" And she says, "Oh, my dear, sweet Thomas, the letter says that, dear Mrs. Edison, your son Thomas is the most extraordinary, smartest young man that's ever graced this school. And he is so incredibly smart, so incredibly brilliant. Unfortunately, we do not have the time, talent, or resources to help him achieve his potential. If you want him to become all he's capable of becoming, you must teach him yourself. Sincerely, the head schoolmaster." Well, as they say, the rest is history. He was homeschooled. His mom poured into him, invested in him, and he became the world's greatest inventor.
Right.
I mean, let there be light. We wouldn't have electricity without Thomas Edison.
Right.
Well, then as the story goes, Thomas's sweet mom passed away. And when she died, there was a treasure chest in her bedroom. Guess what the only thing in the treasure chest was? That letter.
Wow.
So he goes with great affinity, great fondness. That was an inflection point in his young life. And he pulls the letter and he begins to read it aloud to himself. And do you know what it said? "Dear Mrs. Edison, your son Thomas is mentally retarded and slow of learning. In fact, he is incapable of learning. We have tried and tried, and we are frustrated. We have neither the time, the desire, nor the talent or resources he needs to learn. If you want your son to learn, you must teach him yourself. He is from this point forward expelled from your school."
Wow.
Guys, words have power. And think about just speaking life, speaking truth into people. We wouldn't have electricity if Thomas's mom didn't speak life into young Edison.
Unbelievable. What a story. Man, it's hard to transition from those emotional moments.
Come on, Paul.
Yeah.
Maybe it's all cry.
Gosh, but you're right. Life-speaking words have meant so much to me, and I'm sure everybody that is listening. Okay.
I have a good transition story.
Please, let's hear it.
Okay, last one, I promise, and we'll get back to script. So in a similar story, and I'll share a little bit about this, I came from a broken home, abusive family life. Father was drug and alcohol addict, mother very disassociated. And another very similar story along the lines of this and Thomas Edison, but a young man who's a junior in high school, and all his friends were preparing for the SAT score. And if you don't know, a perfect score on the SAT is 1,600. Well, this young man was not going to take the SAT because, like you and I, Zink, he was a nobody from nowhere with nothing. He was like, what's the point? I don't have a future. I don't have a hope. I'm not going to go to college. And one of his mentors and coaches sat him down and just said, dude, like, what do you have to lose? So he ended up sitting down, took the SAT, didn't study, didn't prepare. And he's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Then, like most young men, he left, went back to life and didn't really think much about it. And several weeks later, he came home and he walked in the door and his mom was like, you're a liar. You're a cheater. I'm ashamed of you. This could never possibly happen. And throws a wadded up piece of paper at him, slams the door and leaves the home. Young man reaches down, picks up the wadded up piece of paper, and guess what it was?
Perfect score.
His SAT score, 1490. So not perfect.
Pretty darn good.
But you remember, can I swear on this show?
Go ahead.
He says, holy shit, I'm a genius. And from that point forward, Zink, that was an inflection point. He started acting like a 1490 kid. He stopped his old bad habits, his old behaviors. Like Aristotle, one of my favorite quotes says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is a habit, not a single act. So he started acting like a 1490 kid. He sat in the front of the room. He took notes. He stopped partying and chasing girls on weekend and started studying and doing extra credit. By the end of his senior year, he was salutatorian number 2 in his class. He ends up getting a full ride to Stanford, graduates with a marketing degree, becomes a marketing media mogul, and is a multi-millionaire by the time he's 40. You want to hear the best part of the story?
Yeah.
Most people don't realize this, but Princeton audits SAT scores. So 20 plus years after he took the SAT, he gets a letter from Princeton that says, "Dear sir, we regret to inform you, you were one of only 7 incorrect scores. You did not get a 1490. You got a 710. So a reporter heard that story and said, "Man, how did that make you feel?" You know what he said? "The 710 kid died a long time ago. I'm the 1490 kid." So that's, I think, a transition for your audience is they have a choice. Are they going to be 710 kids or are they going to be a 1490 kid?
100%.
Because that's what I love about you. You were born a 710 kid, but you're living a 1490 life.
Oh, man. See, there you go with those words again. Thank you. I appreciate it. And it's so true. I hope everybody really does hear that message and realize. And by the way, if they're watching this, listening to this, whatever it is, it means they want to be the 1490, right? No matter what they are. So let's say we're talking to somebody that wants to go from a 710 to a 1490. They want to be an entrepreneur. What would you say is just a few things that you would recommend that they do? Now let's transition back to the financial side of things, right? Sure. Like you as the financial advisor of this person sitting here with $18 to their name, but have
$18.40.
Yeah. What would you say that they do?
So I'd say a couple things are foundational. Number one, money does not change you. It makes you more of who you are. So back to that Aristotle, it's all about developing good habits. Spend less than you make. Track a budget, not to the penny, but live within your means. Spend less than you make. Save the first 20%. Be fiscally responsible. Don't overextend. Don't over leverage. Like all those basics. Like, do you know what the average liability ratio in the United States is today?
I don't.
About 87%. That means for every dollar of assets people have what they own, they have 87% of liability what they owe. So we want to see clients below 50% as soon as possible, ideally below 25%. The second thing my mentor always taught me was money is useful as a servant, deadly as a master. And another one of my favorite stories was J. Paul Getty. You guys remember him? J. Paul Getty was an oil tycoon, wealthiest man on planet Earth. And a reporter asked him, "Mr. Getty, how much more money do you need to be happy?" He said, "Just $1 more. Just $1 more." Well, fast forward 20, 30 years, he was on his deathbed alone. He was married and divorced, I think 4 or 5 times. And another reporter asked him, "Mr. Getty, do you have any regret?" And he nodded solemnly and he said, "I have one." He goes, "I would give all the money in the world, all of it, for one good marriage." He said, married and divorced 4 or 5 times. Christ himself says, "What's it profit a man if he gains the whole world but forfeits his very soul?" So that would be one of the primary points of emphasis I would make is money is useful as a servant, deadly as a master. Money is not what makes life worth living. Relationships are.
That is incredible. How do you balance? That's a great segue too. How do you balance the money aspect versus experiences and those things in your life that are impactful? Like, how do you solidify? How do you balance that personally?
So money is a means to an end or means to an opportunity. And, you know, C.S. Lewis, the famous pastor, author, former atheist, by the way, used to say that money is just dirty paper, but it is dirty paper that allows us to accomplish all of our hopes and dreams and establish financial security, financial independence. It allows us to bless others. And I often say that the measure of a man's advice is his willingness to take it himself. So there's a very popular book right now by Bill Perkins called Die With Zero. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. Okay. So very, very popular. And if I were to write a book like that, it would be more focused on leave your legacy, or as my mentor used to say, trade the money for the memories. So another one of my mentors was a top financial planner in Chicago. He wrote a book called From Selling to Significance, and grew up very traditional Italian family. And they had an adjacent lot to their beautiful home in the Chicago suburbs. And his wife and kids always wanted a pool. And I hope my wife's not listening to this, because this has been a intense moment of fellowship we've had. But as the kids got older, very important in Italian families, dinner and family time, having that nightly engagement is very important. And as his kids got older, junior high, they stopped spending less and less time at home.
Sure.
And his wife, who was very, meek, humble woman, Italian woman, traditional, stood up one night, and he was kind of feeling sorry for himself. And she threw the dishes in the sink and said, "Darn it, sometimes you just need to trade the money for the memories." And she ended up going to a shopping weekend with her friends. And then she came back. And when she came back, there was a 40-foot hole in the adjacent lot. And she asked, "Honey, what are we doing?" And he put his arm around her and said, "Sometimes you just need to trade the money for the memories." Mm. And why I share that is, in his book, that chapter is called My Best Investment, because he talked about how now his home was a home for community, bringing kids over, all their friends. They were there every night for dinner and then some. And so that's something that we've done, like with our family. We have a lake home, and we create tons of community, making memories. And, it's those experiences that make life worth living.
So we got to stay on Bill Perkins for a second, because that is all fantastic. But Bill's a Hawkeye, so I want to make sure that's very clear. So that's why we're going to stay on Bill for a second. So overall, I got into the book, and I do like a lot of things about the book. Overarching kind of theme around the book. What's your general perception of it? That was a great story, by the way, and I love it. Mm-hmm. But what's your overall perception of it?
Well, my general perception is it's a good book, and I think it's well intended. I think the challenge, like in my world, and I'll ask you this way, Tyler, if you had to guess what percentage of Americans retire at 65 with more than $40,000 a year of annual income? What'd you guess?
30%.
Less than 2.
Jeez.
Right?
Not insane.
That was
insane.
I actually went low too.
So think about that. 98% of the U.S. population retires below the poverty line. Mm-hmm. Well, I remember hearing that statistic when I was 16 years old, thinking, wow, that means if someday I become a financial planner, I can literally help 98 out of 100 people that we meet. That is why we do what we do. Why I bring that up is most people in this world are looking for confirmation bias. So I love the Roman philosophers, Greek philosophers said the key to a happy life, the American definition is happy. The Greek-Roman definition is arete, which means excellent. It's actually the key to an excellent life. Well, those two things are, 1, to pursue lifetime learning, and 2, to pursue excellence or pursue virtue. Why I share that is I hope a lot of your listeners that are listening to us right now are looking for what's just one thing I can hear today that changes my life. Right. If there's one thing I learned today that changed my life, this was time well spent. Sadly, you know what most people are looking for? Confirmation bias. So back to Bill Perkins, what people are looking for is reasons to eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow I will die. So they weaponize that book.
See, I was even thinking just a moment ago when you talked about trading money for memories, I also believe that has to be done in context, right? Because there's a lot of, I'm not, probably young people, but everybody that just says, well, you only live once, let's go have that experience, let's go spend that money. And I agree, right? You want to have those experiences, but it can also be detrimental if you're not doing it within a structured plan. The things that you're talking about is don't have those liabilities, don't overspend what you make. And so it's all within context, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a good example of this, and I'll touch on this later, to Bill Perkins and Die with Zero, a lot of the trust planning we've done for other families, again, measure of a person's advice or willingness to do it themselves. So my wife and I have $10 million in life insurance in trust. So we know no matter what, I die today, I die tomorrow, each of my children will get $2 million income tax free. If my kids can't build an amazing life with $2 million income tax free, shame on me as a parent and shame on them for not being good stewards. with that being said, I'm a big, when it comes to my kids, if-then principles. Dad, if I read 10 pages from a book, then could I play video games for 20 minutes? Because of those if-then principles we've established financially, we are very intentional about making memories. So for example, Saturday, we leave for Italy for 16 days. Well, one of the things we're doing in Italy is Sistine Chapel, number one on my list, like the one place I want to go before I die. And no offense to our audience, but I don't want to stand in line or shuffle through the Sistine Chapel with 1,700 of my closest friends.
I've done it. Yep.
I'm not doing it.
Yep.
So I'm paying a lot of money to do what's called a key man tour. So at 5 a.m., our family of 7, 4 bad boys, 1 perfect little girl, my beautiful wife, the key man and a security guard will be the only 9 people in the Sistine Chapel.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
Wow.
How do you put a price tag on that?
Yeah.
So that's a good example of trading the money for the memories.
That is unbelievable. I can't wait to hear about that too, because we're going over Christmas.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it should be great.
I'll set you up.
Absolutely. Man, there's so much good wisdom here, and I want to be super practical for people, right?
Sure.
And so going back to the entrepreneurship side, talk a little bit about how some of the financial tools that you offer or as an advisor you recommend entrepreneurs use within their business.
Yeah.
I mean, you've helped me with lots of these things.
Yeah. So some of this basic is a budget. I mean, I'd say 99% of Americans don't operate just with a basic budget. Quicken and other tools like that can just be so helpful, just having access to working capital. Like I think back to Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. I remember reading or hearing from both of them that they always wanted to keep at least 1 year of working capital available because they never wanted to go to their key team members and say, hey, sorry, I can't afford to pay you. And Steve Jobs, this quote from him specifically is how we run our business. He said, do not hire really great people and tell them what to do. Partner with really great people and do what they say. And so you're going to need to have working capital in order to keep that as a reality.
You staying on the working capital topic, you've actually helped us in the past when we've run out of working capital as well. Like talk
Great
a little bit
example,
about how you've done that.
So back in your early days, again, this was probably when you're an employee, aspiring entrepreneur with NDS and GNC, you guys were selling so much out of Little Omaha, Nebraska and growing so quickly, the bankers didn't know how you were doing it. And so they had, and I'm using your former partner's words, some no-name VP making 60 grand a year come in and literally shut off your lifeblood, which was your working capital fund. And he came in to my office very emotional, very distraught. He's like, what are we going to do? We're going to have to shut the business down. I'm like, what are you talking about? You have all of this capital in your life insurance cash values that is accessible today. And he took that and he said, Paul, I'm never going to let a vice president of a bank control my destiny or control my future ever again. And so that was a good example of we utilize the cash you guys had in your life insurance. And we've done some programs in the past for retention and reward that allowed you to essentially be your own bank or use that type of concept to not just thrive, but for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's just survive. 90% of small businesses fail in the first few years. And that's what I love about your franchise concept is you flip the script.
Right. Hey, Sidekicks, it's Ryan Zink here. I'll never forget the moment I opened my first franchise, helping my first customer, hiring my first employee, and cashing my first check. It wasn't just a business, it was the beginning of living life on my terms. When Tyler and I started Franchise Sidekick, we reimagined how people would find brands and succeed in franchise ownership. We're the fastest growing franchise advisory group in the country because we built a smarter, tech-driven system. Our approach has helped people just like you purchase over 10,000 franchise locations, and we've earned a 5-star rating on Google doing it. Now we're sharing exactly how we do it in a quick 20-minute webinar titled 10,000 Locations and Counting, the Franchise Buyer's Blueprint. If you're ready to explore a path to financial freedom and take control over your future, this is your first step. And did I mention our services are always 100% free? Click the link below to sign up now because you deserve to live life on your terms.
So, Paul, tell me more about this insurance. Tell me, I know he talks about it quite a bit. He's a big believer in it. So let me understand it better because I don't.
Yeah. So I would argue in the entire financial planning industry, there's no topic that is more polarizing than life insurance. And you find two extremes, Dave Ramsey, buy term and invest a difference. And that's the only option. Anyone who else does anything different is an idiot. Or the other side is infinite banking concept and, sell your wife and children and your very soul and put everything you have into life insurance. And there's very little in between. Well, again, I just think it's a tool that's all about stewardship. And I would argue if structured properly, life insurance is one of the most effective tools from a tax and safety standpoint in the United States of America, but it has to be structured properly. So, Tyler, one question I would go back to you is, what if I told you that 81% of every bank and 77% of the Fortune 1000 use life insurance purely for its tax and risk efficiency? What would you say?
Makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
And those are some of the most financially sophisticated people on the planet. Sure. And that's a pretty big market share. So what we do is we use it as a superior fixed income alternative. It's superior to bonds or safe assets or even cash because its yields over 20 years, 6%. It's tax-free, no tax on growth and or distribution. So when you need it, you have access to it. You don't have to wait until 59 and a half or like traditional qualified or other retirement plans. Its standard deviation is 1/5 of the bond market, meaning super safe, AAA rated. And Warren Buffett, again, here in Omaha, he says he has 2 rules to investing. Rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1. Well, that asset's paid a positive rate of return every year since 1857. So think about that. 2 world wars, a Great Depression, COVID, 9/11, tech bubble, financial crisis, doesn't matter. All it does is go up. Well, explain to me how that's a bad investment.
Mm-hmm. So for anybody listening, do you feel with a whole life scenario, they need somebody like yourself to be setting this up, or can they do this by themselves?
Well, yeah, you'd need to work with an advisor to have a properly structured plan. So I guess 2 things to that. Number 1, that asset has been most effective during black swan events. So my life insurance isn't my best investment, but where it's been a game changer is when life falls apart, when COVID happens, when the Great Recession happens, when a banker shuts off your inventory, when you're growing faster than they can make sense, heads of tails of. That is when it becomes truly life-changing. So like 2 easy examples, because a banker will be your best friend when things are going well. They will be your worst enemy when things are not. So again, I said a couple times earlier, the measure of a man's advice is his willingness to take it himself. It's like 2 easy examples. 1, 08 and 09, the great financial crisis. My wife and I had been married at that time for about 12 years. We lived in this teeny tiny house, and her and everyone else was pressuring me to build this big Mac Daddy home. And I didn't have a compelling reason to do that. Then 08 and 09 happened, and guess what I did? I built our dream home for 50 cents on the dollar because I could leverage my life insurance to do just that. And at the time, our builder was, the best builder in Nebraska for 10 consecutive years or something like that. Well, sadly, he went bankrupt and took every home that he was working on with him, except for one, because mine was collateralized through my life insurance. I was my bank, not him.
Really cool. Yeah.
Number 2, we did the same thing during COVID. We've always wanted to have a lake home like Zink and make memories. And we spent a lot of time out there. We were all baptized out there. Like, again, our heartstrings are connected to that place. And during COVID, there was a home for sale there that I offered basically 70 cents on the dollar. And the builder said, or the realtor said they'd never take it. I said, well, all they can do is say no. That's one of my life mottos, by the way, is all they can do is say no.
Right.
I had a crush on my wife since we were 11. Everyone said she was too pretty, too good for me. I said, all she could do is say no, which she did for 8 years. I asked her out about 1,000 times.
She's still too pretty and good.
No, that's an understatement. Hey, sign of a good salesman is how smoking hot those spots. It is. But anyways, so I said, hey, all they can do is say no, and offered 70 cents on the dollar contingent that I could close tomorrow. Well, guys, remember in March of 20, during COVID, banking system was shut down. So you couldn't get access to capital March, April, May, not until June, Father's Day of 20. So he said, how can you close? The banking system is shut down. I said, don't you worry about it. I've got the cash. You say yes, we'll make this happen. So he countered for 73% of the asking price. And I said, done. The worst part of moving is moving. So just give me the keys and leave. And he literally gave me the keys, left. Pictures on the wall, TVs, furniture, plates, dishes, boom, gone. That's probably now doubled in value in 5 years. That never happens without my life insurance cash value.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great story. Oh, you hit the heartstrings too with the 08 story because the bankers being your worst enemy when things are bad. I remember that during that time, I just bought a second restaurant. I paid cash for it. The arrangement with my bank was go ahead, we'll refund you once, everything's closed. Then the financial crisis happened and they called me and said, we're not going to do that.
No.
I remember sitting in my office thinking this is the worst day of my life.
Worst enemy.
Worst day of my life.
Well, that goes back to, let's talk about, there's so many people that want to have their house paid off or they want to have all this net equity into those assets. Well, I do like having a low liability ratio, but that is something to think about is that asset is buried. And when you need it, the bank's not going to give it to you. So having, to Zink's earlier point, that working capital, having access to cash within 24 hours, that could literally be the difference between life and death in a business.
Yeah. Well, let's just go off that a little bit further. So, one challenge that I had in my 20s, I was a young entrepreneur, is when do I invest into my business and when do I make investments outside of my business? I struggled with that for many, many years because I felt guilty that I was pulling money out of my business potentially, even a couple $100 a month. You know, when you're early, you're like $500 a month is a lot.
Yeah.
So how do you give advice around early, young stage entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I love that. So I'd say a couple things. One, we're very different. We say we're unique and special in the financial planning industry. And what most financial planners are going to tell you is, hey, you need to diversify. You need to give me, X amount every month, every year, blah, 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 blah. And while I agree to that to some level, guys, if you do what you do right, you're your best investment.
Yep.
Okay. I want to see you thrive. And I want the returns you're capturing in your business to shatter, to dwarf what I'm able to do for you. But I'm your just in case capital. Just in case the world falls apart, just in case COVID happens, a pandemic, a financial, just in case, I want to make sure you live to fight another day. And I want to make sure over time you thrive. And I want to make sure over time you and your family never, ever worry about money again. But if you guys do what you're supposed to do, your best investment is what you're building. Bar none.
One thing that's so relevant to our relationship, because when I first started investing with you, obviously it was peanuts. I don't even remember the amount, but
$150 a month.
Was it really $150 a month? Okay, it's funny. Yeah, $150 a month, which is just such peanuts, right? But the thing that was so valuable to me is it kept us in relationship, right? Yep. We still had a working relationship that allowed me, when I finally got to the point where I felt like I had access, I didn't have to go find my person at the point or build a relationship at the point. And now, I run in lots of entrepreneur circles, and a lot of people have pretty polarizing opinions even on whether they should manage their own money versus using an advisor. And because of our relationship, our financial relationship together, I felt I've had so many advantages. A few examples are, if I was managing my own money, I wouldn't know what to do outside of maybe just putting it in, VOO and maybe investing into a stock or two that I felt was beneficial, but I would never be able to keep track of it. I would never be able to understand, like, when the market was going down, how do I push in? And, that alone has been significantly impactful for me financially. And we should tell the story. A few times when the markets have gone down, we usually keep capital in accessible places that we can push in as hard. Because, again, Warren Buffett, what's he say? Be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. Yeah. And we execute on that plan perfectly so many times. Do you maybe want to share how we've done that?
Well, I've said for 27 years, if I had to do this all over again, I would throw my finance degree away and I would get a degree in psychology, because it's proven that emotional decisions are 8 to 10 times more powerful than logical ones. And so you see lots of smart people do lots of dumb things on purpose because of the emotion. And I think back even to Buffett's shareholder meeting a few weeks ago, they were talking about tariffs and all the chaos and panic that tariffs created here in April. And they said, how do you feel about the current conditions? And Buffett said, well, I'll tell you one thing. In the 80 years that I've been investing, it is often when things feel worst that is the best time to invest. And right now, things feel pretty bad. So having access to that capital to strike, he also said the patient or the winning is not in the buying, the winning is in the waiting. But having the cash you need when it is necessary to act. And that's what we've done during the Great Recession. We acted. You had working capital and access to cash. COVID, I was hammering you. This is a super funny story, Tyler. I was a little premature. So early March, market starts crashing. I call Zink. I'm like, hey, now's the time we got to start deploying cash. And he, like everyone else, like, no, this is the end of the world, zombie apocalypse. I'm like, well, let's take a baby step. So we did. Well, then the market dropped 34% in 33 days. And I called him. I'm like, hey, we got to do more. And he said, Paul, I'm only going to do more on one condition. You know what it is? You can guarantee this is the bottom.
He missed it by 33 days the last time.
But it was that time, but I didn't guarantee it. But we still laugh about that. But you never know when it's the bottom. And so two quick things. One, Tyler, kind of back to your question, I would argue, as a business owner, do you invest in your business or do you invest with me and diversify? It's not an either or question. It's a both and. It's like, what's more important, diet or exercise? The bottom line is, I'm going to help you do more of what you do best. That's a synergy. That's what I'm going to do. And then, back to the timing, we just experienced the 30th market correction, which means a 10% or more drop. That's a correction. We just experienced the 30th correction, 10% decline since World War II. Guess in months how long it typically takes the market to recover from a 10% correction?
6. Yeah, less than 6.
4.
Yeah.
Guys, when I ask most people that question, they think it's 1 to 4 years. It's 4 months.
Well, you've educated me on it. And actually this last time, this market correction just a few months ago was such a great example of why our relationship is important. On my own, I would have never had the knowledge or the confidence to push in at a certain point. But we had the conversation. I had some treasury bills sitting on the side that I maybe wasn't going to need. And I don't know if we even did this or not, but I think we talked about maybe even selling some bonds and paying penalties to push in. And within 3 months, the market had corrected itself and I made a significant amount because you made that phone call and I trusted you.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. So one, most people I would say you want something done, ask a busy person. You would have missed it. You would have missed the opportunity. And then 2, back to the psychology, when most people want to get in after it's come back. So they're buying high, selling low. They're doing it backwards. Yeah.
It's been a huge strategy. And there's so many other examples too of why having an advisor. Actually, there's one more that I do want to share because I talk often about my Survivor Alliance. You know that TV show Survivor? And the only way to win is you got to have this small alliance and everybody has their own roles and they all work together until the end and then they all kill each other. But, you obviously are a major part of my Survivor Alliance as well as my CPA, my attorney, both business and trust attorney. And the thing that you've helped me understand is you reach out to those people at any time without my permission. And oftentimes I get bills for it and I don't even blink, and not from you, obviously, from the others. And I don't even blink an eye because I know every time you or somebody on your team, Jared and I had this conversation last week. He's like, I talked to your CPA and I already took care of it. I love that because I know my goals. I trust everyone on your team. And Jared having that conversation with my CPA saved me significantly more than whatever the bill is that I'm going to get. And so that is the Survivor Alliance concept, is when you are surrounding yourself with advisors you trust, you give them full access to each other because they all know which direction we're marching. It always pays off. And another example is my estate planning, my will and trust. There is no way I would have the amount of money I do in that trust or using the exemption without you prompting me to do it long ago.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So that makes me think of 3 things. One, I love Survivor Alliance. That's awesome. One of our corporate names is Proverbs 11:14, which is, in the multitude of counselors, there is victory. And we always say best idea wins. Like we're not so ego tied, just best idea wins. And I think back just with that specifically, I was at a conference last year with the Ashley Institute. And the Ashley Institute monitors ultra successful, high net worth investment and buying or consumer habits. And they asked, this was the top 150 financial planners in the country. And they asked, by far, number one, what is the most important attribute that ultra successful, high net worth person looks for in a financial advisor? Guess what it was?
Referral from someone else.
So I said trust and relationships. Yeah. Others said follow through, client experience, low fees, performance. He said, guys, all of those are great answers, but unfortunately, they're all wrong. He said, by far, number one, not even close, what the ultra successful high net worth look for in a financial advisor, simplicity. Mm-hmm. Make my life easy, make my life convenient. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're trying to do. We want to win, but we want to win by making your life simple and make it easy.
It's funny that you say that because I've spoken to a few people that have considered working with you, that have had a lot of success in their life. And they say, why do you work with Paul? And there's lots of reasons. But the number one thing that I've said that I like the most is that you've figured out your team manages high net worth individuals with ease. Mm-hmm. Like I don't have to remember when insurance payments are due or when to push money into the market or any other thing. I get tons of mail and email that I can just immediately put into my, file box and say, I don't have to think about it.
Or when you have unused exemption that we want to maximize just in case it goes away. I mean, all those little things most people miss.
Mm-hmm. Even like not knowing the outcome of the presidential election last year, you gave me a heads up and you said, if it goes this way, here's what you need to consider. If you go that way, this is what you need to consider. And I took action, not knowing what the outcome was going to be.
Yeah.
Tons of correlation too with Sidekick, franchise Sidekick. We have a lot of high net worth individuals that come in looking for a franchise and are like, just figure it out for me. Like figure out the best opportunity for me based on my circumstances. And that's what we do.
I love that. Yeah.
Which interesting. Okay. Talking back to the entrepreneurship side. So we've been talking a lot about aspiring entrepreneurs. What about successful entrepreneurs, right? They've got a business. They've either pulled cash out or they've had an exit an event. Like how do you work with those folks?
Actually, one of my favorite stories, 1999. So I was 3 years into my career, and one of my favorite clients who had also become a really good friend, he was always that guy, Paul, scale of 1 to 10 for risk. I'm an 11. I'm an 11. I'm an 11. And so he was pouring into his business. It was going like crazy, but the little things he did with me on the outside, push the risk on, aggressive. Sells his business in 1999 for $3 million, which at the time was a lot of money. And he calls me up and he says, Paul, scale of 1 to 10 for risk, I'm a 3. I'm like, whoa. Like you've been pouring into me for 3 years, 11. And I knew the answer psychologically, but I wanted to hear himself say it.
Yeah.
So I said, what changed? And he said, Paul, yesterday my wealth was theoretical. Today, my wealth is real,
right?
And I don't want to lose real money. Mm-hmm. And I will say in my 27-year career, one of the guarantees I can make, I can make very few guarantees in this career, but this is one of them. As you get older, as you accumulate more wealth, you will want 2 things. I guarantee, I promise it. You will want less risk and you will want less taxes, without exception.
That is so true. And I've experienced it. I mean, most of a high percentage, obviously it was only $150 before I had any success as an entrepreneur, but most of it has been that I've given you has been kind of pulling out of a business or through an exit. And you just feel like you've spent so much time, so much risk, so much energy to accumulate that. The last thing you want to do is to worry about it at night. Yeah. You just want to lay down at night and know that is extremely safe. And you've done a wonderful job helping me get.
Well, we love Morgan Housel. I had the opportunity to meet Morgan a couple of years ago. We actually spoke back to back at a conference. I had the opportunity to introduce him. So it was super cool. And in his best-selling book, The Psychology of Money, do you know what he says? By far, number one is the most important criteria for any financial decision you ever make.
What is it?
Peace of mind.
Yeah.
Can I sleep at night?
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Well, I'd love to transition into your family and kids, if that's all right.
It.
So I think
my
you got some
topic.
Really interesting perspectives around this. But I'd love to, dive into just in general, some core beliefs around your family and things like that, but more so on the wealth side. I'd love to learn how you educate your children about wealth and about money. I would love to dive into that.
Love it. Well, one, everything starts with values. Rick Warren, the pastor who wrote Purpose Driven Life, says we can't get along if we're not aligned. And alignment always starts with values. And so this is a bracelet that myself and all my boys wear. And this is our 5 family values, which is 1, trust in the Lord, 2, personally responsible, 3, others focused, 4, lead by example, 5, purpose driven. And that's been just created great boundaries and a great foundation for our entire family. So everything, our interactions, how we interact with one another, with others, everything starts with those 5 core values. So in respect to money and how does that operate, my kids hear the same things that I've shared with you guys today. Money's useful as a servant, deadly as a master. Money doesn't change you. It makes you more of who you are. So I've instilled very fundamental disciplines with them. When they were very, very young, very small, their first piggy bank ever I got was a very unique piggy bank that had multiple slots. So the first slot was the give bucket because Proverbs says, give from the first fruit of your labors. The second was the save slot because I always tell all my clients and my children, pay yourself first. I promise if you, back to Warren Buffett says the habit of saving is more powerful than the skill of investing. And that's the world's greatest investor saying that. So I always tell my clients, if you save 20% of your money, whether you make 50 grand or 50 million, I promise you'll never worry about money again. So pay yourself first. Then the third bucket was the spend bucket. So having those things in proper order, give, save, spend.
And do you have different, so you have five children?
4 bad boys and 1 perfect little girl. Yeah.
So have you noticed, this is funny because I've got two boys and their spending habits, and I can teach them the same thing.
Yeah.
Their spending, saving, how they approach money, they're completely different though. Have you noticed that with your 7 kids or 6 kids?
5 kids.
5 kids. Sorry, 5 kids.
Yeah. So yeah, it's funny. I remember we did an RV trip when the kids were really, really little, and I put together like an incentive list because incentives matter. And so they could earn capital by doing certain things. Like one is as simple as being nicest to mom that day. One was we were on an RV, so the last person to use the restroom of the day.
Oh, that's cruel.
Little incentives. But my kids came home from that trip with all this money, and I've always had a rule: whatever you save, I'll match, because I wanted to. Again, incentives matter. So my daughter at the time would have been like 4 or 5, and she's like, oh, well, I want this, that, or the other. So she spent, say, half of it, invested the other half, so I matched it. Will was like, oh, well, I want this new Lego Star Wars game. So he spent that, invested the rest, and I matched it. Jacob literally went upstairs, like came down with wads of cash and like threw it on my table, and I matched all of it. And the kids were like, that's not fair. I said, no, that's wisdom. And I matched every nickel. So we still joke, Jacob's 24 and he has like $100,000 in his bank account.
Wow.
Plus Roth IRAs. Like the kid has more money than, a typical retiree in America today because he's just been disciplined. Like he doesn't know or understand any other way. So like back to the retirement question, guess what the average American retires off of post 65 today? 27 grand. Imagine working your whole life, grinding, working, sacrificing, and $2 grand a month. I mean, that is typical.
That's unbelievable. So you've got a few kids now that have, gone through your home, gone through school, they're out in the world. Like how do you advise them around work and money and saving and investing today?
So I'm going to just share one more thing with Tyler because I think this is cool. Well, actually, I'm going to share 2 more things. So one, there's a great game by Robert Kiyosaki called Cash Flow.
Right.
And so it's like Monopoly on steroids, but the scorecard is an income statement and a balance sheet. And guys, most college grads don't keep a personal financial statement or understand an income statement or balance sheet. And my kids were doing that when they were like 6 and 7. So they knew what an asset was. They knew what a liability was. So that's just common knowledge to them. And that was one of the best things I could have done. The fun part of that game is at first, my kids always fought to be the doctor because the doctor had the highest income. but he also came with the most debt.
Yep.
So after a few times of playing that, nobody wanted to be the doctor because they realized it took forever to get out of the rat race when you're saddled with that liability.
Yeah.
And Proverbs 22:7 says, beware, the borrower is a slave to the lender. And we don't want to be slaves to anybody or anything. Okay. The second thing is Bible says he who is faithful in little is faithful in much. So now that my kids are adults, 24, 22, 20, 18, 16, we just do more of what we've always done. It's like one of my favorite stories growing up. Every year at Christmas, we have our epic year-end celebration as a team. The family meets us for lunch, and then we go up to Target and we'll buy literally $15,000, $25,000 now of toys and socks and underwear, and then we'll take it down to the local mission and play Santa Claus. And back to, this may sound cruel, but when my kids were little, I would make them buy the number one thing on their Christmas list and then give it away. And Sarah thought I was sadistic. But one of my all-time favorite stories, remember the Wii, the Nintendo Wii? Couldn't find one on the planet. And my boys were like 5 and 3, 6 and 4, something like that. And we're up at Target buying all these toys, all these gifts for the mission. And I hear this woman having a very irate conversation with this, poor young worker at Target. So I walk over and I'm like, hey, is everything okay? And she's like, this kid won't let me return it. And it was a Wii. And he's like, I'm sorry, ma'am, all sales are final. And I said, how about this? Let her return it and I'll just buy it right back. So we did. And I gave it to Jacob and William. And I said, hey, boys, this is now yours. And you do with it whatever you feel is appropriate. But remember why we're doing what we're doing. Acts 20:35 says it is more blessed to give than it is to receive. You have this big, beautiful home to go back to. You have all this stuff. I just want you to think about who could benefit from this more, you or these kids. And it was so sweet. The whole drive down, I can hear him whispering in the back. And it was super snowy, like a blizzard. And we get down there and James Cumming, Candace Gregory's right-hand man, comes out. And he's like, how you doing? Da-da-da. We're unloading. And the two boys get out. They're holding hands, hand in hand. And Jacob goes, Mr. Cummings. Like he's trying not to cry. Mr. Cummings, we really, 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 he said really like 17 times, want this week. We think you should have it. And he gives it to him. And Cummings leans down and hugs him and says, boys, you guys are better than Santa Claus. And my boys still talk about that story. And it just taught them it is more blessed to give than it is to receive.
So good. You said there was 2 stories. Is there another one?
So now we just do more of that. So he who's faithful in little is faithful in much. So as the kids have gotten older, they continue to give. They pay themselves. Like Jacob just got, his first real job. He graduated with his master's on April 18th. So he's saving 20% of his income. So back to Aristotle, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not a single act, but a habit. He who's faithful in little is faithful in much. So if you're making those types of decisions when you're making 60 grand, you're going to be making those same types of decisions when you're making 6 million.
Yeah.
And look at professional athletes, lottery winners, actors, rock stars. They're typically bankrupt within 3 to 7 years because they think it's a revenue problem. If I just made more money, I would make more responsible decisions. No, money doesn't change you. It makes you more of who you are. It just magnifies or augments those bad behaviors.
Absolutely. I know we've been going for a while. And this is great, but there's still two more things on my mind that I want to get to, and maybe you could think if there's anything you want to touch on too. Number one is I want to hear your opinion of just investing in the market overall. I know you're a believer, but if I was somebody that was going to came to your office, I said, look, I got $1 million. I believe the market is a scam. Let's just say that was my take, right? I want to know how you would respond. And then after that, I want to get into a couple of really milestone moments that we haven't touched on that you've had in my life. So let's start with me as the skeptic.
Awesome. Man.
I want to come and invest with you, but I am a skeptic. What would you say?
Well, I love it. One, we joke that many of our very best clients, one of their core traits is skepticism. And skepticism to me is not an opportunity to argue. It's an opportunity to enlighten or to help them learn. And so I would ask, why do you say that the market's a scam?
I think that I can manage it. Well, I don't know. I wasn't ready to say that.
It's easily manipulated, or like it's being manipulated.
Corporations are taking it all for themselves. There's not enough left for the investors, things like that.
So one key point to that, and you just kind of demonstrated it, is he who asks the questions has the control. So I always find with all else fails, ask a question. When you initially asked the question, what I thought about was my favorite finance professor, my statistics professor, Robert Cook. So I would always carry my little yellow pad, or now we have our little branded, Ludacka Wealth Partners notebooks. And when I was in college, I'd sit up front and I'd take my notes because I was a 1490 kid. And he would always ask, Mr. Ludacka, who wins, the casino or the field? And I would always say, well, the house always wins. And he would say, au contraire, mon frère, the house only wins 53% of the time. And why he would share that is true day to day in a casino. Casinos win 53, field wins 47. That is the same statistic with the stock market. Day to day, market's up 53% of the time, down 47. So when clients watch the market day to day, they are bipolar. One day they're happy. Then it's literally a coin flip. But this is super important. Year to year, guess how often the market's positive?
60 plus.
73%.
73, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So 3 out of 4 years, you're a big fan. We're high-fiving. Paul, you're awesome. 1 out of 4 years, I told you I'd be better doing this myself.
Yeah.
But Giovanni, who runs our investment philosophy and strategy, his favorite we believe statement is we believe in decades over days. Because decade to decade, guess how often the market is positive?
90%.
Almost 100% of the time. So decades over days. And so back to Robert Cook, he would always say to the whole class, if this was true, which it is, how do the markets and casinos have all the money? And he would say they just keep playing. They just keep playing. So it's a long discipline in one direction.
Yeah.
And, back to, I'm going to combine 2 quotes, but Nick Murray, who I love, and Warren Buffett, they both say a similar thing. Nick Murray always points out, Ryan, do you believe in small business?
Yes.
Do you believe in big business?
Yes.
Okay. You're not buying the stock market, you're buying businesses. That's what people confuse. So I would always say that to the skeptic is you're not buying a market because that makes it nameless. It makes it lack identity. You're buying businesses.
Yeah.
Do you believe in Apple? Do you believe in Palantir? Do you believe in NVIDIA? Do you pick it? Yes. So you're buying businesses. And then I think back to this most recent election, Warren Buffett says, I don't care who the next president is, as long as men like me, Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, get up and run good businesses and treat our clients fairly. As long as that happens, Zink, I'm betting on America. And that's what I'm doing. I'm betting on America.
Really good. Okay, well, problem solved, right? People know where to go. All right, the other thing that's on my mind is we started here, and I kind of want to just circle back to close it because it's emotional for me. It's a good story. Timmy, maybe we want to get some of these videos ready, but there's been a couple of milestone moments in my life that you've had a major part of, and I want to start first after I had my first exit. I was having I don't know what you want to call it, early life crisis, right? When you define yourself through a company for so long, you just don't know what else to do, right? And I was in the nutrition space from 22 until 36. And 14 years early in my career, I didn't know anything else. I had just gone through an exit, and then I came to you just to talk a little bit about not only investment, but just life and like what I should do and how I should do it. You tell the story better than I do. Would you mind maybe sharing that?
Sure. So a few things I just think for all the listeners that's most important. Your business is what you do, not who you are. And don't miss that. That is so important because we have a tendency to wrap our identity around what we do, wrap our identity around our business.
Which I did. I got lost in it, right? I'd worked it so hard for so long and I so desperately wanted it to work. I did that exact thing.
That's very dangerous. And so the first thing I wish I would have kept it up here, I journal every morning. So I get up every morning at 4:13. And the very first thing I do is I write down 3 identity statements. I'm a faithful husband. I'm a great father. I'm a memory maker. I'm not the man I want to be, but I praise the Lord. I'm not the man I used to be. I'm a man of integrity. I'm a man of excellence. I am disciplined. That is identity. And why I share that is because so often men miss that. And especially like high achievers, we're really good at being on our case. We're not very good about being on our side. And there's a big difference. So like when you sold your business or when the restaurants are no longer around, what happens to that identity?
You get a little lost.
Question yourself.
Massive void, right? There's a massive void. So that's very dangerous. So just remember, your business is not who you are. Your business is what you do.
Right.
And then the second part, I love the story that goes along with this because Zink had an exit and he's like, it's kind of like Ricky Bobby. I don't know what to do with my hands. And he's like, what do you do? This is my first time. Like, what do you suggest? I said, well, this is probably going to be the first of many. Just knowing Zink like I do, I said, the first thing I want you to do is make no major decision for a year. Do not make any major decision for a year. Let's absorb this. Let's recalibrate. Let's build a new foundation and then strategize, get a vision for what it looks like. Well, classic Zink fashion, 10 days later, he called up and he's like, hey, I know you told me not to make any major decisions, but I did. And I want to take you to lunch and tell you about it. So we go to lunch and the punchline was, how old were you? Were you 30?
35, yeah. 36.
35, 36. And he's like, I'm going to retire. And I'm like, no, you're not. He's like, yeah, I am. I'm going to coach baseball and blah, blah, blah. I said, dude, you are just getting started. Your best is yet to come. And this is all about stewardship. You can't retire. God's not finished with you yet. And like I joke, my wife and I, we don't fight. We have intense moments of fellowship. So let's just say Zink and I had a very intense moment of fellowship. But the rest is history.
Well, the other part of that is because your opinion still today, but very much at the time mattered a lot to me, and you had said, in fact, I think you're going to start another company and you're going to sell it for this much.
Yeah.
And I was like, screw you, Ludacka. Because now all of a sudden I'm
he
like,
used a stronger word than screw that.
I went from this idea of like, hey, maybe I'm done. I'm going to go spend time with my kids and coach them in baseball to now this person that I look up to having this expectation on me. And I all of a sudden felt like this weight.
Yeah.
But once I got away from that lunch and I reflected on it, it wasn't so much of a weight. It was more of a belief. And it really did stir you and my meeting with Dale Williams had such an important message for me to pivot from the idea of maybe I am done to no, I got more ahead of me.
Gift of high expectations. And can I talk about that for a
Please,
minute? One of our core beliefs is Proverbs 27:6, which is wounds from a friend are better than kisses from an enemy. And we live in this society of people pleasers and ass slappers, and they just tell people everything they want to hear. I always tell my clients, my friends, I love you, so I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. That is the definition of a courageous conversation. So Zink and I had a very courageous conversation at lunch that day. And my favorite part of the story where I get super emotional is I remember that number. And I said, this is the number. And you're like, don't put that pressure on me. Don't do that. He said, Paul, you're a pusher. You're always pushing. And then I think back then to just however 3 years later, Zink 5 years later, Zink gets a call and he's like, hey, I got an offer. I'm like, amazing. Tell me all about it. He tells me the conversation and the offer was, here. I'm like, dude, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. And he was kind of like, I'm like, dude, what's wrong? He's like, it's not what your number was. It was half that. So do you remember what I said?
No, remind me.
Said, all they can do is say no. So go back and say, hey, I'm honored by this offer, but my number is 2X. And I told you the Tito story. Remember Tito's vodka? And he's like, well, what if they say no? I'm like, then it's not a legit offer. And as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really good. All right. And so the last story on my mind, and this one was not intentional, but it's just sometimes when you have those right people in your life and take you to the right opportunities, for some reason, there's just like good things that continue to happen around the right people. Right. And so this story was, there's a guy in my EO group, his family has a farm. And his parents bought it, I don't know, 30 years ago, not knowing exactly how it would last. And now him and his siblings, they use it all the time. It's like the family meeting place. They do retreats there. They host people constantly. It's just something that has pulled the family together. And so I had this idea. There was a farm that was for sale only about 30 minutes from our house. And I went, looked at it. I fell in love with it. I started negotiating with the owner. And it was just too much. Finally, I let the numbers get in the way of the vision, right? And I was just like, it's just too much. I went back home to my wife and I'm like, look, I'm disappointed, but we're not buying this. We can't, that's just too much money. I don't know how often we're going to use it or whatever. And it just so happened that you had invited us to, Jordan Davis was the opener. It was
Luke Combs.
Luke Combs. Yeah, Luke Combs was the headliner. Jordan Davis was the opener. We have dinner and then we go to this concert and we're in the fourth row. And it's one of those like stages where they can sing on all the sides, right? And Jordan Davis is going, and up until this point, he had not come to our side of the stage. He had been singing on all the other sides of the stage. And then right at this point, he comes right over to our side of the stage. And actually, Timmy, if you have the video, let's play. Let's play like the first 35 seconds or so to see what happens here. This is us in the fourth row.
It's about the three most important things in my life, and that's my faith in Jesus Christ, my family, and my friends. Damn it, I don't care what kind of country music you like. The staple of country music are those three things, in my opinion. We wrote this song and I sent it down to a redneck buddy of mine named Luke Bryan in Georgia, and he helped sing it. This one's called By Dirt.
Right there, perfect. So he sings By Dirt. And the whole time I'm thinking, you can't buy happiness, but you can buy dirt. I mean, literally that day, I had said no to it. As soon as the song was over, I turn around and I look at my wife and she's crying. And I look at her and I say, we're going to buy that farm. And she's like, I knew you were going to say that. And literally the next day we called the guy back and we said, we'll take it. And we just finished it.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's where we went and planted the tree and it's all done. And now I hope it's something that we use in the family for years.
Part of your legacy. I love being a part of that. And we always say we don't believe in coincidence. We believe in serendipity, and that's divine coincidence and no mistake that you were there that night at that moment. And I was just happy to be a part of that.
And the fact that it was you that invited is just something serendipitous about that.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, good. I think why don't we, let's wrap this up.
I can't compete with these stories. I got nothing else to add here. This is wild.
Oh, man. Just to wrap this thing up, Paul, you are somebody that has been so important into my life. You are of course, you're a financial advisor, but more important than that, you're a mentor and a best friend. Really appreciate you and all the impact you've had on my life, my wife, my kids, everything else. I would not be close to iron without you. Like I said, I would be soft putty. And with that, I think we'll just close it. Anything you want to say? How can people find you? Anything you want to close with, and how can people find you?
You could find us at ladakawealthpartners.com. The thing I would close with is my mentor would always say, every day is an opportunity for us to change someone else's life forever. Today's your day. God bless you guys.
Love it.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Sidekick Life, where we highlight true sidekicks, entrepreneurs who've got their customers' backs, solve real-world problems, and after helping enough people, get to live the life they've always dreamed of. We'll see you next time.